Galina had hoped that the pregnancy would simply go away, but her mother quickly noticed something was wrong when Galina began to experience symptoms of toxemia. She took her daughter to the doctor, but it was too late to terminate the pregnancy. Despite the fact that the grandmother initially pressured Galina to leave her newborn daughter at the hospital, she later insisted that Galina take the baby home. However, the grandmother showed little affection towards her granddaughter, and Galina often blamed her daughter for her own failures. When Varvara was 3 years old, Galina got married and was relieved that someone had taken her and her daughter in. However, her new husband was not fond of Varvara, and Galina sent her to live with her mother. Galina soon gave birth to her son Sergei and became more focused on him. Varvara was rarely invited to visit her mother's house due to her stepfather's disapproval, and Sergei also disliked his sister. He complained to his father that Varvara had broken his favorite toys, and as a result, she was no longer allowed in the house at all. The grandmother struggled to care for Varvara on her own, especially financially, and Galina offered little help. Whenever the grandmother asked for assistance, Galina would remind her that she had not wanted to give Varvara to the state, and therefore it was her responsibility to take care of her. The woman realized how fortunate she was to have kind neighbors who were always ready to lend a helping hand. As the woman's daughter grew up, she trained as a nurse and even learned massage therapy to assist her grandmother in her recovery after suffering from a stroke. Years later, Galina remembered her daughter only when her husband brought his bedridden mother to live with them in the city. Galina called upon Varvara and her own mother to take in her mother-in-law, explaining that she had other obligations, and her husband was not pleased with the smell in the apartment. When Varvara refused, Galina created a scene and made hurtful remarks, forcing Varvara to physically remove her from the premises. The stress of the situation proved to be too much for the grandmother, and she passed away peacefully in her sleep. Varvara worked with a helpful neighbor to organize the funeral, as the grandmother had left instructions with her friend. Galina did not involve herself in the preparations, and only showed up for the burial alone, without her husband and son. As Varvara and her mother were alone in her grandmother's apartment, Galina began searching through the chest of drawers where her mother usually kept her documents. However, she was unable to find anything and became frustrated. Galina explained to Varvara that she needed the documents to claim the inheritance, as she was the first-order heir. Varvara went to her room and returned with a document, which she handed to her mother. It was a photocopy of a deed of gift, revealing that the grandmother had given the apartment to Varvara a long time ago. Every time Galina asked about the will, the grandmother would simply reply that the apartment was already in the hands of the rightful owner. Galina was outraged and couldn't speak for a moment. After catching her breath, she called her mother a sneaky snake and blamed her for not being able to afford to treat Sergei's addiction. Varvara disagreed and said that treating an addict who does not want to be treated is pointless. Galina then insulted Varvara and told her to forget that she had a mother. In response, Varvara calmly replied that her grandmother had raised her, and she had almost forgotten about Galina. As Galina was about to physically attack her daughter, the phone suddenly rang. It was her husband, demanding that she return home immediately because of his mother's unbearable smell. Galina hurled curses at her mother and daughter while getting dressed in a hurry, and even threw a metal shoe spoon at Varvara before storming out the door. Varvara narrowly avoided the flying object and was left standing there in shock. She went to the mirror, gently stroked her flat tummy, and spoke to her unborn child, acknowledging that not all mothers were the same, but she promised that her child would never have to experience such abuse. Varvara regretted not telling her grandmother about her plans to marry the neighbor's son and start a family. She knew her grandmother would have been overjoyed and had always spoken highly of her future son-in-law. Varvara had been waiting for the perfect moment to share the news, but now it was too late. Subscribe to our channel not to miss new interesting life stories. Give us your likes, write your opinion in the comments.